Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The email had no sender name, just a subject line that made her blood run cold. I see you every night. Attached was a photo of Sarah, asleep in her own bed, taken from what appeared to be her bedroom doorway. Someone had been in her house. Someone had been watching her sleep. With trembling fingers, Sarah slammed her laptop shut and grabbed her phone to call the police. But then she stopped. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought she was just being paranoid? And worse, what if the watcher was someone she knew, someone who lived nearby? She looked out her window at the quiet suburban street of Pinewood Lane. All the houses looked normal, peaceful. Which one of her neighbors was hiding a terrible secret? Sarah didn't know it yet, but her decision to investigate on her own would uncover something far more disturbing than she could have ever imagined. Sarah was not the kind of woman who scared easily. She lived alone in her small blue house, worked as a computer programmer from her home office, and kept to herself. She liked the quiet of Pinewood Lane and the privacy it gave her. Her neighbors mostly left her alone, which was exactly how she liked it. Until now, the mysterious email had changed everything. Sarah couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Every creak in her house made her jump. Every shadow seemed to move. She kept checking her doors and windows, making sure they were locked. This is crazy, she whispered to herself as she peeked through her blinds for the 10th time that day. I can't live like this. After 3 sleepless nights, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. If someone was spying on her, they must be doing it through technology. As a programmer, she knew how easily security systems could be hacked. She opened her laptop and began checking her home network. At first, everything seemed normal. Her Wi-Fi was working fine, though it had been a bit slower lately. She had thought it was just her internet provider being unreliable. But something didn't feel right. Sarah dug deeper into her router settings. Her eyes widened as she noticed something odd. A device was connected to her network that she didn't recognize. It wasn't just random letters and numbers like most device names. Someone had actually named it Pinewood 01. What in the world? Sarah muttered, her forehead creasing with worry. She lived alone and only had her phone, laptop, and smart television connected to her Wi-Fi. She never shared her password with anyone. So who was using her internet? Anger replaced her fear. Sarah decided to kick every unknown device off her network and change her password immediately. She stepped outside for better signal, leaning against her porch railing while typing in the new credentials. And that's when Jack Foster spotted her from his living room window. Jack had always been suspicious of Sarah. Not for any real reason, but because she never seemed interested in being friendly with anyone in the neighborhood. She didn't come to community gatherings, barely waved hello, and now here she was, standing outside, frantically typing on her phone. To Jack, it looked suspicious. His mind jumped to the worst possible conclusion. She was up to something illegal. Maybe she was hacking into someone's accounts or planning something dangerous. Jack was a retired high school teacher who had too much time on his hands. He prided himself on keeping the neighborhood safe, which mostly meant keeping tabs on everyone's comings and goings. Honey, he called to his wife. That Chen woman is outside doing something strange with her phone again. His wife Ellen sighed from the kitchen. Leave her alone, Jack. Not everyone is plotting something evil. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling. I'm telling you, something's not right with her. Normal people don't act that way. Before Ellen could stop him, Jack grabbed his phone and dialed 911. Yes, I need to report something suspicious, he said, his voice filled with self-importance. My neighbor, she's outside doing something weird with her phone. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look right. Can you send someone to check it out? The dispatcher asked for details, but Jack didn't have any real answers. She's up to something, I just know it, he insisted. Little did Jack know that his hasty judgment would soon put everyone on Pinewood Lane in danger, including himself, and the real threat had nothing to do with Sarah Chen at all. Sarah had just finished updating her Wi-Fi password when she heard the police sirens. At first, she barely paid attention, thinking they were headed somewhere else. But then she saw the police car slow down and stop right in front of her house. Great, she muttered. Just what I need today. 2 officers stepped out. One was a short woman with curly red hair and sharp eyes, Detective Maria Gonzalez. Her partner, Officer Thomas Bennett, was tall and thin with a kind face but watchful eyes. Sarah stayed where she was, confused but not afraid. She hadn't done anything wrong. Ma'am, Gonzalez called out, her voice firm but not unfriendly. Received a call about some suspicious activity at this address. Can you tell us what you're doing? Sarah blinked in surprise, looking between the 2 officers. Suspicious activity? I'm standing in my own front yard. Could you please explain what you're doing with your phone? Officer Bennett asked politely. Sarah fought the urge to laugh. This was ridiculous. I'm changing my Wi-Fi password, she explained, trying to keep her voice calm. Someone's been using my internet without permission. Gonzalez glanced at Bennett before turning back to Sarah. Do you live here, miss? Now Sarah did laugh, a short burst of disbelief. Yes, of course I do. I've lived here for 4 years. My name's on the mailbox. Before Gonzalez could respond, an angry voice cut through the air like a knife. She's not telling the truth. Sarah turned to see Jack Foster standing on his front lawn, arms crossed over his chest, glaring at her like she was a criminal. His white hair was messy and his face was red with anger. She's always out here doing something suspicious, Jack continued, walking closer. Typing on her phone, looking around like she's watching people. Today, she's been standing in the same spot for 15 minutes, just tapping away. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. I was checking my router settings, she said flatly, because someone I don't know has been using my Wi-Fi. Jack scoffed loudly. Oh, sure, and I'm supposed to believe that? Gonzalez turned to him with a tired expression. Sir, do you have any actual evidence that Miss Chen has done something illegal? Jack hesitated, his confidence faltering slightly. I don't know. I just think you should check. Sarah could see the annoyance on Gonzalez's face as the detective turned back to her. Miss Chen, would you mind if we take a quick look at your router settings? Just to clear this up? Sarah felt anger bubble up inside her. She shouldn't have to prove anything to anyone. But she also knew how these situations could quickly get out of control, especially for someone like her, a woman of color living alone. Fine, she said, trying not to sound as irritated as she felt. She unlocked her phone and pulled up the settings. Here, take a look. Gonzalez leaned in, her eyes scanning the list of connected devices. Suddenly, her expression changed. What's this Pinewood 01 device? She asked, pointing to the screen. Sarah shook her head. That's what I've been trying to figure out. It's not mine. Bennett stepped closer, eyebrows raised in concern. So someone's been using your Wi-Fi without permission? Sarah nodded. And I don't think they were just stealing internet. Look at the connection logs. It's been running non-stop. Someone's been watching. The atmosphere shifted instantly. This wasn't just about a nosy neighbor anymore. Jack, still standing nearby, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Wait, what do you mean watching? Sarah turned to him, her eyes cold with anger. I mean, someone has been spying, and they might be watching all of us. A heavy silence fell over the front yard. Jack, who had been so certain he was right, now looked uneasy. Spying wasn't what he had expected to hear. All right, Gonzalez said, her voice more serious. Let's go inside. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. Sarah led the officers into her house, her earlier fear returning. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet she was being treated like a suspect in her own home. Jack hesitated before following them. He wasn't invited, but something told him he needed to hear this. Once inside, Sarah placed her phone on the dining table and connected it to her laptop so the screen would be easier to see. The device list appeared again. There it was. Pinewood 01. Still connected. Still active. Bennett leaned in, scanning the details. Can you see what kind of device this is? Sarah clicked through several screens, her fingers moving fast. I can't tell exactly, but she suddenly stopped, her body going still. Gonzalez noticed immediately. What is it? Sarah's throat went dry as she stared at the screen. It's been accessing camera feeds. The room went silent. Jack blinked several times, trying to understand. What? What camera feeds? He asked, his earlier accusatory tone gone. Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Mine, she said, turning the laptop so everyone could see. My home security cameras. Someone's been logging in and watching my live feeds. Bennett's expression hardened. You're saying someone has been spying on you through your own security system? Sarah nodded, her face pale. That's exactly what I'm saying. But as she scrolled through more data, her stomach dropped. It wasn't just her cameras. Her system had flagged multiple IP addresses, some belonging to her network, but others from different homes. Oh no, Sarah whispered. This is really bad. Gonzalez leaned closer. What do you mean? Sarah tapped the screen, her fingers shaking slightly. Whoever this is, they're not just watching me. They're watching other people in the neighborhood. Jack took a step back, shaking his head. No, that can't be right. Sarah turned to him, her eyes narrowed. You sure about that? She clicked on another log, and a new feed opened on her screen. A dimly lit hallway, then a living room, then a bedroom. Jack gasped, his face draining of color. Wait, that's... Sarah didn't even have to ask. She recognized it immediately. That's your house, isn't it? Jack stumbled backward, pressing a hand to his mouth in shock. For once, he was speechless. How the hell is this happening? Gonzalez asked, her voice sharp with concern. Sarah gritted her teeth, her programmer mind already working through the problem. If I had to guess, someone in the neighborhood set up a fake network, a Wi-Fi signal that looks like a normal connection. People unknowingly connect to it, and once they do, their devices get compromised. You mean a man-in-the-middle attack? Bennett asked, showing he knew something about cybercrime. Sarah nodded. Exactly. Jack's voice shook as he finally spoke again. So you're saying someone's been watching me, my family? Sarah met his eyes without blinking. That's exactly what I'm saying. Jack sank into a chair, his hands trembling. Oh my God. Gonzalez's jaw tightened as she pulled out her radio. All right, we need to figure out who's behind this, and fast. But what none of them knew was that the person responsible was much closer than they thought. And there was someone else involved, someone who'd been watching from the shadows, pulling strings that none of them could see. Detective Gonzalez wasted no time. She called for cybercrime support while Officer Bennett secured the scene. This is bigger than we thought, Gonzalez muttered. If someone's running a surveillance network, they're not just invading privacy. They're committing a felony. Bennett nodded, his expression serious. And if we don't stop them now, who knows how far they've already gone? Sarah, still seated at her laptop, was digging deeper. She wasn't a professional hacker, but she knew enough about network security to trace where the data was being sent. She opened the IP logs and suddenly froze. Wait, this can't be right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Gonzalez looked up. What? Sarah turned the laptop screen so everyone could see. The data isn't going to some random server somewhere. It's being sent to an address right here in the neighborhood. Jack's eyes widened in horror. You mean someone close by is behind this? Sarah nodded, her face grim. It's coming from a house just a few doors down. Gonzalez's expression darkened. Can you pinpoint exactly which one? Sarah worked quickly, cross-referencing connection timestamps with signal strength. Within minutes, she had a match. Her stomach dropped as she recognized the address. Jack recognized it too. No, he whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. That's Anna's house, Sarah finished, her voice cold. Anna Foster, Jack's 16-year-old granddaughter who had moved in with him and Ellen 6 months ago when her parents divorced. She was quiet, always on her computer, barely spoke to anyone. Now things were starting to make a frightening kind of sense. Jack's face went pale as milk. No, that doesn't make any sense. Anna isn't, she wouldn't. Bennett stepped in. We need to talk to her now. Jack hesitated, his world crumbling around him. He had called the police on an innocent neighbor, only to find out that the real threat might be living under his own roof. I'll take you to her, he finally said, his voice barely audible. Sarah stood up. I'm coming too. Gonzalez gave her a sharp look. No, you stay here. Let us handle this. Sarah clenched her jaw. She hated sitting back when she was the one who had uncovered everything, but she knew pushing back wouldn't help. Fine, she muttered, but you'd better get the truth out of her. As they left, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Something wasn't adding up. A 16-year-old girl running a sophisticated surveillance network? It seemed unlikely. There had to be more to the story. Little did she know she was right. And the truth was even worse than any of them could have imagined. Jack's hand shook as he led Gonzalez and Bennett down the street to his house. Each step felt heavier than the last. Anna, his sweet granddaughter, the one he had welcomed into his home, helped with homework, tried to protect from her parents' messy divorce. It couldn't be her. And yet, deep down, a voice in his head whispered, what if it is? He opened the front door with his key, calling out, Anna, can you come downstairs for a minute? No answer. Gonzalez exchanged a look with Bennett before stepping inside. We're going up. Jack didn't argue. He just wrapped his arms around himself, his earlier confidence completely gone. They climbed the stairs, reaching Anna's bedroom door. It was closed, no sounds coming from inside. Gonzalez knocked firmly. Anna, this is the police. We need to talk. Still nothing. Then the sound of movement, a chair scraping, footsteps. Bennett's hand hovered near his gun, though he didn't draw it. Open the door now, he commanded. Slowly, the doorknob turned. The door creaked open, revealing Anna Foster. She looked startled but not exactly surprised. Her eyes darted between Gonzalez, Bennett, and her grandfather. Her long black hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her hands fidgeted at her sides. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice tight but controlled. Gonzalez studied her carefully. "We have reason to believe you've been accessing private security cameras in the neighborhood. Want to explain that?" Anna's face barely changed, but her fingers curled slightly, like she was gripping something invisible. "What? That's crazy," she scoffed, though her voice lacked conviction. "I don't know what you're talking about." Bennett wasn't buying it. "Mind if we check your laptop?" Anna's jaw tightened. "You don't have a warrant." Gonzalez stepped closer. "Anna, we can get one. But right now, we're giving you a chance to tell us the truth before this gets worse." A long, tense silence followed. Then Anna exhaled loudly. "Look, She ran a hand through her hair. "I wasn't doing anything illegal, okay? Gonzalez cut her off. "Then why is your IP address linked to a network breach involving multiple homes?" Anna froze. Jack's voice broke as he finally spoke. "Anna, please tell me you're not involved in this." Her eyes darted to him, and for the first time, her mask cracked. She looked young and scared, a teenager caught in something bigger than herself. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she muttered. "It started as a project. I wanted to see if I could get into someone's Wi-Fi just to prove I could do it." Gonzalez's voice was sharp. "So you admit you hacked into the network?" Anna hesitated, then nodded slowly. Jack's breath caught in his throat. His own granddaughter, the girl he had defended and protected, was a criminal. Anna continued, speaking faster now. "It was just supposed to be an experiment, but then I saw the security cameras and I got curious." "Curious or obsessed?" Bennett asked, his eyes narrowed. Anna didn't answer. Gonzalez's patience ran out. "How many people have you watched?" Silence stretched between them. Then Anna's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know." Jack staggered backward as if he'd been struck. "Oh my God." Anna looked at him, real regret crossing her face. "I swear I wasn't hurting anyone," she said desperately. "I was just..." "Wait." Sarah's voice suddenly came from the doorway. Everyone turned to see her standing there, breathing hard like she'd run all the way from her house. "You shouldn't be here," Gonzalez started, but Sarah cut her off. "She's lying," Sarah said, looking directly at Anna. "Or at least she's not telling the whole truth." Anna's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" Bennett asked. Sarah stepped into the room, her eyes never leaving Anna's face. "This setup is too sophisticated for a teenager working alone. The way the data was being routed, the encryption methods, it's professional level stuff." She turned to Gonzalez. "Check her computer, but also check for communications with someone else. She's not working alone." Anna's face went completely white. "Is that true?" Gonzalez demanded. "Who are you working with?" Anna's eyes darted to her laptop, then back to the officers. She looked trapped, terrified. "I can't," she started, then stopped herself. "He'll kill me." The room went dead silent. "Who will?" Jack asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Anna, who are you talking about?" Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Uncle Paul." Jack felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "My brother?" he asked in disbelief. "Paul is behind this?" Anna nodded, tears now streaming down her face. "He said it was just a game at first. He taught me how to set up the network, how to access the cameras. I thought it was cool, like we were spies or something." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But then he started watching people all the time. He made me help him. He said if I told anyone, he'd hurt Mom." Jack felt sick. His own brother, a man he'd trusted, who visited regularly, who had offered to teach Anna programming when she showed interest in computers. "Where is he now?" Gonzalez asked, her hand moving to her gun. "I don't know," Anna sobbed. "He comes and goes. He has a key to the house."
Bennett was already on his radio, calling for backup. Gonzalez turned to Jack and Sarah. "You both need to leave now. This is a potentially dangerous situation." Before anyone could move, they heard it, the sound of the front door opening downstairs. "Anna," a man's voice called up. "Are you home? Your front door was unlocked." Anna's face contorted with terror. "It's him," she whispered. Paul Foster froze at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at the group gathered outside Anna's room. His eyes, the same blue as Jack's, narrowed as he took in the police officers. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an edge to it. Gonzalez and Bennett both had their hands on their weapons now. "Paul Foster," Gonzalez called down. We need you to put your hands where we can see them." Paul's friendly expression didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "Is there a problem, officers?" "Hands where we can see them," Bennett repeated more firmly. "Now." Paul slowly raised his hands, but his relaxed demeanor made Sarah's skin crawl. He didn't look like a man who had just been caught. "Jack," Paul said, looking at his brother. "What's this all about?" Jack could barely speak. "The cameras, Paul. The spying. We know everything." Something flashed across Paul's face, not fear or guilt, but annoyance, like a child whose game had been interrupted. "It was just a little project," he said with a shrug. "No harm done. No harm." Sarah stepped forward, anger overwhelming her caution. "You invaded people's privacy. You watched them in their homes." Paul's eyes fixed on Sarah, and the look in them made her take a step back. There was nothing human there. "You must be Sarah Chun," he said softly. "I've seen a lot of you lately." Sarah felt sick. "Paul Foster, you're under arrest," Gonzalez began, starting down the stairs with her handcuffs ready. What happened next occurred so quickly that later, no one could agree on the exact sequence of events. Paul's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Bennett shouted a warning. There was a flash of metal, then the sound of a gunshot. Paul fell backward, clutching his shoulder where Bennett's bullet had struck him. His gun, for that's what he had been reaching for, clattered down the stairs. "Stay down," Gonzalez shouted, rushing toward him with her weapon drawn. Paul looked up, his eyes finding Anna's. The teenager was trembling, tears streaming down her face. "You shouldn't have told them, Anna," he said quietly. "Now look what you've done." In the days that followed, the truth about Paul Foster emerged piece by piece, each revelation more disturbing than the last. He hadn't just been spying on the neighborhood, he had been gathering information, planning something much worse. The police found detailed notes about each resident's schedule, security weaknesses in their homes, and personal information that could be used for identity theft or worse. Anna, they discovered, had been both accomplice and victim. Paul had manipulated his young niece, using her computer skills and threatening her family to keep her compliant. She would face consequences, but with consideration for the coercion she had experienced, Jack and Ellen Foster were devastated. Their family had been torn apart, their trust shattered. They couldn't look at Anna without seeing Paul's influence, couldn't reconcile the sweet girl they knew with the crime she had helped commit. And Sarah, she had become the unlikely hero of Pinewood Lane. The neighbor everyone had suspected had been the one to save them all. 1 week after Paul's arrest, Jack knocked on Sarah's door. She opened it cautiously, surprised to see him standing there. "Ms. Chun," he began formally, then stopped. "Sarah, I came to apologize." Sarah leaned against her doorframe, saying nothing. "I was wrong about you," Jack continued, his eyes on the ground. "I made assumptions based on, well, nothing good. And I'm sorry." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "Do you know what's crazy?" she finally said, her voice calm, but with an edge to it. "I was out here minding my business, trying to protect my privacy, and somehow I was the one who got the police called on me." Jack flinched. He had no defense because there was none. "I was wrong," he admitted again. "I was completely unfair, and I'm deeply ashamed." Sarah let that sit in the air between them for a moment. Then, with a small sigh, she stepped back from her door. "Would you like to come in for coffee, Mr. Foster?" Jack looked up, surprised. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Sarah said. "But maybe it's time we actually got to know our neighbors the right way." Jack nodded gratefully and stepped inside. Outside on Pinewood Lane, life was slowly returning to normal. But for its residents, nothing would ever be quite the same. They had learned the hard way that the real danger isn't always where you expect it to be, and that sometimes the person you're quick to judge might be the one who saves you in the end. The truth had been right in front of them all along. They had just been looking at the wrong person, and that mistake, it would change their lives forever.